Howdy Loxlings! This is a scene from Plain Crazy, the first on-screen appearance of Mickey Mouse, created many months before its more famous sibling. It was created whilst Disney was still finding its footing as a company, and they had just lost their major mascot, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, to copyright complications with Universal. Point being, they needed to push out a success quickly. However, its release was delayed due to an underwhelming screening. It was later usurped by the much more famous Steamboat Willie. Now, we both know that Disney didn't go the way of the dinosaur, so why did Steamboat Willie succeed when Plain Crazy didn't? Steamboat Willie begins with nothing on screen, however there is music. One of the biggest complaints about Plain Crazy was a lack of music. This music is supposed to intrigue the audience. The next thing worthy of notice is how it transitions to its main video. It doesn't cut or slowly fades, it expands from a certain point, slowly revealing more and more of the scene to you and building suspense. It's the same principle as why expensive products take so long to open. They want you to build a connection with it as you see it unfold before your eyes. It's a decently impressive shot animation-wise, but the real reveal is the audio. This entire short revolutionised audio animation synchronisation, because that's what you do when somebody criticises one element about your work. The shot repeats for a decent while, and then it adds on and expands with shots of these three little whistles. After that it's gone, we zoom into Mickey Mouse here to provide another example of audio animation synchronisation. Mickey Mouse doesn't really feel like a character in Plain Crazy, he felt more like a cog in a bigger mechanism of planes and movement. But in Steamboat Willie, Mickey feels much more like a character separate from his story and not just a way to deliver jokes. I'd imagine the reason he does is because of his connection to the theme of this story of music, which was the first thing the story presented. Also, he is the person who delivers the music, the conductor. Speaking of which, Mickey is the first organic creature we've seen so far, creating a contrast between him and the rest of the boat's mechanisms. Mickey joyfully whistles the tune of Steamboat's Bill before tugging on a string, setting off 3 whistles. To this point, the only living thing we'd seen was this one mouse, but Disney then subvert your expectations by having these 3 whistles act as characters. We only see them for a few seconds, but we instantly can deduce that they are likely siblings or in some sort of similar relationship, aged in order of height and pitch. The youngest one struggles with remembering and carrying out tasks, and the elder ones enjoy picking on the younger one. Then we are introduced to the main villain of this story, Pete. Pete towers over Mickey Mouse and pulls him back from his task, but in the process only somehow stretches Mickey out. This shows a few things. First of all, it assures the audience that Mickey isn't going to get hurt and further establishes a sense of cartoon whimsy. But it also portrays Pete as somewhat powerful but incompetent. The scene continues with these two continually attempting to one-up each other, with Mickey taking the mickey out of Pete, who repeatedly attempts and fails to use his larger size and more power to his advantage, before eventually Pete kicks himself with some rubber hose animation and Mickey falls down the stairs. This also feels like a good time to mention that Pete is a cat and Mickey is a mouse, which would pave the way for many later classic mouse and cat dynamics. This has Pete receive a sound, whereas Mickey has much more build-up to his sound, showing how Mickey often tries or manages to avoid consequences until the last second, but they eventually come back to put him in his place nonetheless. And then we meet this parrot. Parrots are known for being mocking or annoying, but Mickey is known for attempted murder, and so he slams a bucket into the parrot, shutting it up. Now, a large complaint about the original Plain Crazy is that Mickey didn't act like a hero. He was rude, he put people in danger, he only tried to benefit himself, and he was a bit of a misogynist. So, why does this scene and the numerous other late scenes featuring lots of animal abuse manage to avoid that connotation? Well, first of all, this show has already established a language of violence. It's not a massive tonal shift, as we've already seen plenty of shouting and kicking and stretching, and it's established that nobody really gets hurt, whereas in Plain Crazy, Mickey doing a similar act of violence to a bird is unprecedented, as up until that all of the animals were happy and cartoonish and nothing bad actually happened until that moment. But another and more important reason is that they've already established Mickey Mouse's personality. These two shorts start with seemingly similar scenes. They show an ecosystem of movement and elements doing tasks before zooming in on Mickey Mouse, who is doing a task in keeping with the short's theme. At this point, Mickey is perfectly innocent, ready for a money shot in the trailer before he goes on to attack a bird. With this interaction with Pete, we see a more troublemaking side of the character that explains his attacking of the parrot, but also assures us that the character does still have good intentions overall. We then see Pete look back at Mickey and display his anger by jiggling his established belly of jelly. The most interesting thing here is that Mickey is in the wrong. He's taking his anger out on Pete's perfectly innocent parrot. Pete would be perfectly justified to punish Mickey in some way. Wait a second. Does this Mickey Mouse short have an unreliable narrator? Does it have a narrator in the first place? I mentioned how Mickey Mouse is the conductor. Does that also mean he's the storyteller? I think something along those lines may actually be the case. I'll go into the next 4/5 of this short with that perspective in mind. Anyway, Pete then pulls out some tobacco from his pocket, chews it, spits it, it hits the bell, he's amused. He spits it again, it hits his face. This once again paints Pete as incompetent. Also, this shot is absolutely disgusting. Like, if you're going to be the first ever animated short with sound synchronization, at least do it well. Ugh. Then Pete gets very angry again, but this time it's unjustified to get you to overlook his previous scenes where he was completely justified, that sly Mickey. Now we get one of the most drastic shot changes yet, turning to a shot on the dock, which is the first shot not on the steamboat or the water. This change is emphasised with the new busyness of the music, but you're still able to see where all of the noises come from. This lasts for 7 seconds, which is 6 seconds too long in my opinion. But I suppose it's important to paint a parallel between this and the first shot, with these two ecosystems, each with cylindrical things going up and down that emit noise, as a much less frequent but similar noise in the background plays. They both show us this diverse scene and then zoom into one specific part. In this case, Fob the cow, who, similar to Mickey Mouse, inhales and then lets out a moo. Also, shouldn't the previous shot's background noises continue in this shot? They're completely diegetic, so I don't get why they just get cut off now. Maybe it was too difficult to loop a sound. So what does New Year's clearly drawing a parallel between these two shots? Speaking of which, these two locations then meet. The boat arrives at the dock and we get more beautiful characterisation, like with the whistles, as the boat itself stretches and moves onto the dock. If you look carefully, this has the deeper meaning of, oh, never mind, the shot's changed. Mickey ties up the cow and it starts flailing about. In an attempt to control the situation, he pulls on the cow's tail and milk is sprayed onto him. This unambiguously portrays Mickey as incompetent, like it did with Pete earlier, going directly against the previous idea of Mickey being the narrator. This could mean a few things. It could be a complete accident and none of this was actually intended in the first place. Ah, you're funny. Walt is purposely portraying Mickey like this to provide comeuppance for his earlier actions. Or, now that the story's progressed, we're seeing more of an exact enactment of events, or due to the shot change. Or the one I most agree with, Mickey is mostly the narrator, but sometimes he slips due to his genuine incompetence and loses control for brief moments, like when his anger takes over and he attacks the parrot, or when he tries to lift the cow but is too stupid. Anyway, the cow then gets force-fed, and then we meet Minnie Mouse again. She arrives late to the boat and runs along the shore, so Mickey uses the fishing rod to get her onto the deck. However, she loses her sheet of music and it's swallowed by a goat. A goat? Yeah, and a goat? Minnie is obviously shocked at this goat eating paper because it can be harmful due to unspecified chemicals. Mickey fights against the goat but fails and realises the goat can make music. Now, as I mentioned earlier, music is one of the main themes of this story. Music provides a looking glass into these environments and displays how they function. It's been used in 2 sections so far, one on the boat, one with nature. The rest of the short is dedicated to merging these two, presenting animals interacting with man-made or mouse-made items and environments connected by the music. Case in point, here Mickey is drumming with spoons, hammers, crates and bins, all man-made objects, before using the music to transition into using a bird as an instrument. Or this shot where Mickey does them both at the same time, drumming on a cow's teeth with man-made drumsticks. Now I need to address the common criticism of this being animal abuse and causing Mickey to act out of character in his meanness. I disagree, not only because of the previously established idea of Mickey being an unreliable narrator, but also this clearly isn't meant to be read literally. Instead, Mickey is meant to act as a display of this merging animation and music and nature and machinery that this story was meant to represent. So, Mickey drums on the cow's tongue before doing a nice little bow to wrap up the short, and if it were just a display of the theme, music and animation, a theme that would be very popular in Mickey Mouse, including Fantasia, actually this short kind of serves as a predecessor to Fantasia. I wonder if they're in conversation. Either way, the story doesn't end here, as the story still needs to be resolved. So Pete and Mickey have a final confrontation, serving as a payoff for the tobacco scene earlier and delivering Mickey's comeuppance. He's portrayed as threatening as the shot slowly pans over to him and he covers the scene, towering over Mickey. Mickey does a slight whistle, then attempts to walk away, but he is swiftly dragged into a potato bin. This scene does a great job of making Pete menacing. Mickey is dropped onto the floor, paralleling this scene, and Pete very angrily points at the potatoes before dashing away. One thing I'd like to say here, and this applies for the entire short, is how well it implies emotion and events without dialogue. It's definitely a large part of the charm, and it really forces the animation to get creative. Walt Disney could have used dialogue. In many of the later shorts he would voice many of the characters himself, but he decided not to for more creative shot competitions. It's definitely a large part of the charm and really forces the animation to get creative. Anyway, Mickey peels a pile of potatoes, and they're correctly scaled in proportion to him being a mouse, or thereabouts. But then what about the parrot, bucket, knife, or the actual steamboat? Speaking of the parrot, it reappears to provide a nice conclusion, and it once again laughs at Mickey for getting comeuppance. And Mickey once again throws a bucket at the parrot, this time into the ocean. Mickey listens to it as it drowns, and he laughs to himself. Okay, maybe that was a bit harsh. So then the story ends. I think the ending is purposefully odd to get you to analyse it and the entirety of the short, and I guess it worked because, yeah. So that was Steamboat Willie, and in conclusion, it does a very good job at combining animation and music in a way that blends with the metaphors of the story. I rate it a 26.87 out of 29.